What is up, guys? I'm your friendly neighborhood web war fanatic, and this will be my official Winter Soldier hero review for Marvel Champions, and I'll be taking Winter Soldier through my patented power ranking system here. So for the system, we have 5 major categories that I think are the most important things whenever we evaluate a hero in Marvel Champions. They're thwarting, they're attacking, survivability, economy, and versatility. And then for each one of these major categories, I have 3 subcategories that I think are the most important thing for, each major category. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first category here, which is the Thoring ability here for Winter Soldier. And the 3 subcategories that I have is a stat line, the control, and the cards for Winter Soldier. How does he thwart? Does he have ways to remove threat and mitigate threat in Marvel Champions? And yeah, let's take a look at the first subcategory. So that is a stat line. In my opinion, of the stat line of a hero, the 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 2 defense, the most important stat line is their thwarting stat right here. We always want to have a thwart stat of at least 2 on our hero, and that's just really good to help us, thwart off the initial threat off the main scheme or thwart off side schemes that start off in the scenario, right? Just having that, thwart stat of 2 is just going to make way more impact than a thwart stat of 1, right? It's double the thwarting, and Winter Soldier, as you guys can see, definitely has that thwart stat of 2, so he definitely gets a check mark here for his thwarting stat line. Next would be the control of the hero, and what I mean by control in terms of thwarting is, does the hero have a way to flip down safely, right? Can this hero mitigate threat or like confuse a villain or just do something to like block out a villain activation, particularly a scheme activation? And Winter Soldier definitely has that, right? So for Winter Soldier right here, his major card to help him mitigate threat is going to be the Silent Infiltration right here. It's a 2-cost upgrade. It is a prep card as well. And as a hero response, after you attack and defeat an enemy, we can discard this card, ready your hero, and confuse enemy. So what I really like about this card is that you can just play it down and just save it for like the future, right? And Winter Soldier has 2 copies of this card in his kit, right? 2 copies of Silent Infiltration. So if you have them both down, anytime the Winter Soldier defeats and attacks an enemy, you can choose to discard it, right? It's not a forced response. You can do whenever you want. As long as you are the one attacking and defeat an enemy, then Winter Soldier can confuse an enemy, which will hopefully be the villain, and he can flip down and then do whatever he needs to do in Alter Ego, right? So really cool card here, works very well with a Winter Soldier, and is locked behind defeating an enemy with attack, which is what Winter Soldier wants to do anyways. So you do have to have a minion out most of the time. Also, if you defeat a villain, like flip the villain from like stage 2 to stage 3, that also counts as defeating enemy, so you can also get it off that way as well. But yeah, this is pretty much the only card the Winter Soldier has in his kit. It is quite reliable though, because it's an upgrade, so you can just have it in play and on demand choose to discard whenever you defeat an enemy to proc that confuse. But if you are facing a star enemy, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Winter Soldier to reliably flip down. But I will still give him a check mark here for this, because I usually give any hero that has a reliable way to confuse a check mark here for their control. And then for the third subcategory for Thoring is going to be the cards in Winter Soldier's kit. And most hero gets a check mark here. Winter Soldier does not have any thwart events in his entire kit, right? No thwarting cards at all. Like all of his identity specific cards can't remove threat. His only way to really remove threat is, with his, basic thwart stat of 2, but also with his hero ability here, the response Lethal Protector. After you attack and defeat an enemy, remove 2 threat from a scheme. So this is actually really cool. So it's not once per phase or once per round. So if you have like 5 enemies and you defeat and attack all the enemies, 5 different times, like, you defeat one, defeat another one, defeat another one, defeat another one, defeat another one, then you can remove, 2 times 5, which is 10 threat from any scheme, right? It doesn't have to just be from the main scheme or a side scheme. You can choose whatever scheme you want to remove it from. So as long as he's defeating minions and enemies every single turn, he's removing threat every single turn as well. So this is a really powerful ability, and I've often found myself like with the excess of threat removal, like, oh man, the main scheme's at 0, there are no side schemes, I don't really need to remove any threat, but like I'm still killing minions here, and then I don't really need to take off any threat, right? So this ability can be very powerful, and it is pretty underrated, but it is tied behind having minions, I mean, right? So if you do not have minions, you can't really proc this. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and not give him a check mark here for the cards, because he doesn't have any other card, like a regular authority event, to actually do that. So overall, Winter Soldier's authority, it's pretty good. I gave him an overall score of 2 out of 3. You could definitely argue that it'd be like a 2.5 or like a 3 out of 3, because having the asterisk here, especially if there are minions. But I think it's fair to say, if there aren't any minions, you may struggle a little bit with authority for Winter Soldier if you have to use his basic thwart activation every single time, right? So yeah, overall, I think a score of 2 out of 3 is pretty fair for him. Next would be the attacking category of a hero. So for Winter Soldier, this is his strongest category in my opinion. He gets a full 3 out of 3 score here. So the first subcategory for attacking is going to be a hero's burst damage. And burst damage is very important in Marvel Champions because a lot of the more difficult villains have access to retaliate. So if you're doing a bunch of small pings, you'll take a bunch of retaliate, and that could cause your hero to get defeated before you can defeat the villain, right? And you have to recover that back up. Another reason why burst damage might be important is oftentimes whenever you're flipping a villain stage number, like from stage 1 to stage 2 or stage 2 to stage 3, they might have a very nasty one review ability. So I love to bring a Venom Goblin as a perfect example of this, because when you flip him from stage 1 to stage 2, he deals each player 2 face down encounter cards. From stage 2 to stage 3, 3 face down encounter cards. So that could often end the game for a player. So during that stage flip, you want to go ahead and burst down that final stage in one go. So you want to have burst damage in order to do that. And yeah, Winter Soldier is definitely one of the better heroes in having burst damage, which is really, really nice, because I do think that this is one of the harder areas to make up through aspect cards. So Winter Soldier here, he has 3 copies of Metal Punch, which is his 3-cost attack event. It deals 7 damage to enemy, and if you use a cybernetic arm to pay for it, the attack gains overkill as well. And it's crazy because Winter Soldier has cybernetic arm right here, which is almost always going to be in play, thanks to his alter ego action here, which can tutor it out. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the cybernetic arm here, it's a 1-cost upgrade. You exhaust it to generate a wild resource for an attack event. The event will deal 1 additional damage if you use the arm to pay for it. So if you're using an arm to pay for the metal punch, it will do 3 for 8 damage and have overkill. So that means if you have like a guard minion, you can punch through a guard minion, overkill over to Venom Goblin, and you still have 2 other metal punches, and you also have 2 electrical discharges in his kit as well. This is a 2-cost attack event. Deal 4 damage to enemy. 2 for 4 is like okay, but if you pair with this event using a energy resource stun on enemy, which is pretty good and pretty useful. But even if you're not getting that stun for a big final push, I mean you have 5 attack events right here, right? 3 metal punches and 2 electrical discharges. And one really other cool thing is that Winter Soldier also has 2 copies of arm block here, which is also an attack event. So this one's a little bit different because you can't just trigger whenever you want. It has to be during the villain phase most of the time, but the villain attacks you during the player phase. You can still trigger this also during player phase. But it's a hero interrupt, attack, and defense with both the keywords there. When enemy attacks, do 3 damage to it. If you exhaust the cybernetic arm to pay for this event, prevent all the damage from the enemy's attack. So this is really cool because once again, if you're using the cybernetic arm to pay for the arm block, it's going to do 4 damage with a +1 additional damage from the cybernetic arm. So it's 1 for 4, and you can prevent all of the damage from an attack. Well, that's just crazy value because 1 for 4 is already really, really good, but then also going to block out all damage. That's like a backflip right there, right? So definitely one of the better defense events in the game of Marvel Champions, and a really good attack event as well. So yeah, and Winter Soldier definitely has tons of burst damage, and if you aren't able to defeat the villain, during the player phase, hopefully you have 1 copy of arm block in your hand still, or you draw into one because you can still do an additional 4 damage during that villain phase to help you knock that enemy out. So definitely a lot of damage here from Winter Soldier. Next subcategory for attacking is going to be the small instances of damage. So just like why having burst damage is important, having small instances is also very important to help knock off toughs from like enemies, and also to help you clear off minions and just control the board and defeat minions, right? So Winter Soldier, as the premier minion slayer, obviously has really good instances of damage because he needs to handle those minions, right? So if a hero has like piercing, I'll also attribute that to that, having small instances, because you can knock off those tough stats cards. So let's go over to Winter Soldier's Winter Rifle, one of the best cards that he has in my opinion. It's a 3-cost upgrade, so it's pretty expensive. It's restricted. As a hero interrupt, whenever Winter Soldier makes a basic attack, you can exhaust the Winter Rifle, and then Bucky gets +2 for attack. Yes, piercing and ranged. This is insane because there's no counters on it, right? So it says in play forever. You can usually only use it once per phase because you have to exhaust this card in order to use it. But Winter Soldier will then be swinging for his basic attack of 2 +2, so swing for 4 is piercing and ranged. So you'll bypass retaliate there, and then also you can pierce off the toughs, right? So he is deleting those minions that have a tough stats here with like 4 hit points or 3 hit points in like one shot with the Winter Rifle, which just feels really, really good. So yeah, he definitely has a small instance of damage there to pierce off. But he also has readies here in his kit, which is through the silent infiltration that we talked about earlier. So 2 copies of this 2-cost upgrade. Hero response after you attack and defeat enemy. Discard this card, ready your hero and confuse enemy, right? So often I've used this card whenever the villain, can't be confused. I just want that ready for some extra damage to ready back up and defeat like another minion, which is still really valuable, right? Being 2 cost for ready is already good, right? You do have to defeat enemy, right? But if Winter Soldier defeats enemy, he can ready up, defeat another enemy. So he can definitely have ways to, really control the board of minions. That's kind of his thing. And even if you couldn't get the readies, right, he has 5 attack events right that you can play during the player phase, on demand as a hero action. So you're not even needing to really ready up and use the basic activation to defeat minions. You can just play these events here, right? And one cool thing about the site infiltration is oftentimes if I'm exhausted, as Winter Soldier, or if I start out the turn Alter Ego and I want to exhaust to recover, I flip up the hero form, I stay exhausted, but I can play like an attack event like Electrical Discharge and defeat a minion. Then after I defeat a minion with the Electrical Discharge, because it is an attack, the Sign of Attrition says here, after you attack and defeat an enemy, which I just did with the attack event, I still can discard this card and ready back up and still use Winter Soldier's basic attack activation, which is really valuable because you can get +2 with the Winter Rifle, right? So just crazy, crazy, insane damage and value here through attacking for Winter Soldier. So he definitely gets a check mark for that. And the following is going to be the cost of Winter Soldier attack events. Can he easily pay for it? And I think he might be the best hero in this category right here, right? Winter Soldier, his economy isn't like crazy good or anything, but playing for attack events feels so smooth for him. I would say even more smooth than Wolverine with Wolverine's claws. Even the Wolverine can take like, can pay for attack events for free by taking the damage of that. Winter Soldier's metal arm, the cybernetic arm, it just feels really nice. Like every single turn, being able to basic attack for like at least 4 with piercing and range, and also using the arm to pay for an attack event, and then possibly playing another attack event as well. And his attack event just gets so much value, right? With the stun here and the overkill here, right? Yeah, Winter Soldier, I mean, he feels really nice. He definitely gets a check mark for the being able to pay for your attack events and just run the attack event smoothly here. So he definitely gets a full 3 out of 3 score here for his attack ability. Definitely his best category in my opinion. The next major category is going to be a hero survivability. And Winter Soldier, okay, so I give him a score of 1 out of 3. Let's go over each individual category, and then I also want to add a little bit of a caveat to this. I went ahead and just gave him like the worst possible score, but I think you could definitely argue to give him like a 2 out of 3 or like an asterisk on some of these categories here. The first subcategory for survivability is going to be on the printed hero card on their alter ego or the hero side. Do they have something on there that gives survivability? And usually it will be like, something that can, add to them living, right? And Winter Soldier does not have that, right? In hero form, his hero ability is just, after you attack and defeat an enemy, remove 2 from scheme. His alter ego ability is cybernetically enhanced. Action, spend 1 resource of any type to search your deck and discard power for your cybernetic arm and put it into play, right? So it's kind of grabbing out that arm, right? So not adding anything to survivability. He has, just 2 defense, 3 recovery, and then he does have 11 hit points. So I was thinking there with 11 hit points, that is above average, right? 10 is your normal hit points. So having 11 is pretty nice. But I think it's not enough, right? If you have like 11 hit points and 3 defense, I would give it to him with having both the defense and the hit points, but just having the 11 hit points and everything else being normal, I think it's not enough for me to feel like he has a point there. So I went ahead and didn't give him to that, but he does kind of feel pretty tanky. So I think you could definitely argue for, even without playing a defense and without drawing them, his identity card will still kind of have a little bit of survivability, but just not much, right? Just, that +1 hit point there, having 11 instead of 10. So I didn't get a check mark here, but if you want to give him there, I definitely won't be mad at that. Next would be the cards in his kit, right? What cards does he have if you can draw into them to help increase that survivability? And yeah, Winter Soldier has a couple. He has the arm block that we talked about earlier, right? So it's an amazing defense event. You have to draw into it, but really good to prevent all damage from an enemy attack, right? So if the enemy is like Ronin and they have like overkill or something nasty like that, you can still block out all the damage with the arm block. So really cool. Electrical Discharge can stun enemy. That's also very valuable. And he also has the Winter Armor. The 2 cost upgrade, you get +3 hit points and gain steady. So, steady is really nice to help you have more statuses, right? You can get stunned and still attack, or confused and still thwart. But then getting the +3 hit points will add to that survivability as well. Just having that in his identity kit is pretty good. So yeah, Winter Soldier definitely gets a check mark here. He actually has 3 cards that add to his survivability, but we can only put 1 check mark right here. So that's kind of why I feel like it might be a little bit caveat to give him a why I might need to give him an extra point for survivability here. But, I'm just going to stick to a chart system here. I don't think it'll change much with his end evaluation, at least from me. So he gets a check mark here. And then for his healing ability, this is going to be, does a hero have a way to heal? If a hero drops down to like very low health, can it still bounce back and recover back up and then still defeat the villain? And Winter Soldier does not get a check mark here. If a hero had a very reliable way to ready up, like an on-demand ready, like Iron Man's arc reactor, I'll give them a check mark here. But Winter Soldier does not have that. He does come kind of close though, right? So first off, he has a basic recovery of 3, which is just your average recovery, and he has the sign infiltration here, right? So this card, I do think it's a very reliable way to heal, especially when you need to flip down, right? Because after you attack and defeat an enemy, right? So let's say Winter Soldier is exhausted and he uses like an attack event, right? He defeats an enemy, you can discard this card, ready your hero, and then confuse an enemy. So you can confuse a villain and then Winter Soldier will be readied up, you can flip down and immediately heal. So I did find in my playthroughs with Winter Soldier that he can heal pretty consistently with his silent infiltration. But once again, this will not work against like Steady or Stalwart, right? It will work against Steady, but you need, double confuse on that. And it definitely won't work against Stalwart. So I went ahead and did not give him here a check mark for the healing because overall, if you don't have that card in play, the healing is going to be a little bit rough, but you could definitely argue for it again. So, overall, I gave him a score of 1 out of 3, but definitely if you're playing Winter Soldier and you feel like his survivability is better than 1 out of 3, I think that totally checks out. But yeah, just to be fair here, we're just going to do the 1 out of 3 score here. The next major category for a hero is going to be their economy. And we have three subcategories here. And the first one, just like the survivability, is we want economy right whenever the game starts off. We don't want to get lucky and drawn to like a double resource or like other, resource generators, right? So just as the survivability, we want to have that printed on your card. We also want the economy printed on your card. And Winter Soldier, you could kind of make the argument here, right? So for his alter ego action here, cybernetically enhance, you can spend one resource of any type. Search your deck and discard power for a cybernetic arm and put it into play. So I went ahead and did not give this a point, just like I didn't give Falcon a point here for being able to find his resource generator and add it to his hand, because at the end of the day you're still losing a card from your hand to play the cybernetic arm. It is a really good payoff though, and you want to do that most of the time on your turn ones because you're spending one resource to play a one cost upgrade down, for free, right? So it's one effective resource to play this card, which is usually two effective resources, right? What I mean by effective resource is like Cybernetic Arm, it's one card, right? You're holding that one card in your hand, and you also need one resource to pay for that card. So you're losing two cards from your hand if you're playing the Cybernetic Arm. But if you're tutoring it with his, alter ego ability right here, you can play here with just one effective resource, and you still have five cards in your hand while getting a one cost, upgrade into play. So you can make the argument for this, but I think since overall you're not gaining a resource, right? You're not going up to, from 6 to like 7 cards in your hand. You're going from 6, down to 5. I did not give Winter Soldier a check mark for this, but you could definitely make the case for it. What's really nice about this is that you can search your deck and your discard pile. So I love having the Cybernetic Arm get this card with a caught off guard because you can just tutor it right back with the Cybernetic Enhance and you flip down to Alter Ego, right? So yeah, that is actually really useful. And thematic as well. But yeah, I went ahead and did not give a check mark for that. But once again, you can argue for that asterisk right there. Next would be the cards in his kit helping to him improve his economy, and he definitely has multiple cards. We already talked about Cybernetic Arm. It's a one cost upgrade, a resource generator for attack events, but only for attack events. So a little bit restrictive. And then the event will deal one additional damage, so it's just tied behind attack events. Another resource generator type of card he has is a safe house right here. So one cost support, really good support here for Winter Soldier. As an archer, you actually exhaust a safe house, search the encounter deck for a minute and put him into play, engage with you, and then draw a card. So what's really nice about this is that at minimum you just draw a card, right? So as an archer action to draw a card, that's always good. But you can also get minions, right? So a reliable way to get minions and engage minions because Winter Soldier wants to defeat minions. So this is the most reliable way to get one. Just putting it into play from the encounter, right? Tutoring it right out and putting it into play. You can find yourself a weak minion and then defeat it and trigger all Winter Soldier's abilities that he gets after he defeats minions, like the Silent Infiltration right here, and also his hero ability where when you defeat an enemy, you can remove two that from a scheme, right? So Safe House is super duper for that. And Winter Soldier also has the Winter Mask here as another like pseudo economy type of card. It's a one cost upgrade. You get a spy trait, and it's a hero response after you attack and defeat an enemy. Exhaust Winter Mask to draw a card. Really good, works, synergizes really well with the soldier, and you just get more economy, and you really get the flow with him whenever you are defeating minions. He can run really smoothly, just summoning minions, taking them out, and then proccing all those abilities that we just talked about. So Winter Soldier definitely has good cards in his kit that improve his economy. And lastly is going to be the cost of Winter Soldier's cards. Does he feel smooth when you're playing him? And like I said before, because what he really wants to be doing is attacking and defeating minions, and because the attack events feel so smooth in his kit, and because although the cybernetic arm is locked behind attack events, you want to be playing attack events almost every single turn, or at least using your basic attack activation as Winter Soldier. So yeah, overall, he feels really smooth. He feels really nice. Threat control feels good with him as well. Just attacking and swinging and defeating minions. So yeah, he definitely has a pretty smooth kit. So I give him an overall score of 2 out of 3 for his economy. The final major category for hero, in my opinion, is going to be their versatility. And these are the three subcategories. So the first one is going to be in-game versatility. So Winter Soldier, can he do multiple things in-game, or does he have to do one thing? And one really cool thing that we talked about a lot on the channel is the minion archetype, like the minion slaying archetype where you have to defeat minions. But one cool thing about Winter Soldier is that he doesn't have to do that, right? Although he wants to do that and he gets so much benefit from actually doing that, you could just play him with the rush style and just play all of his attack events and just do tons of damage and try to end games really quickly. Or you could actually just focus on like playing him in like Justice and give him a bunch of like Thor events and not really even worrying about minions because he has a base Thor setup 2 already, right? If you just give him Thor events in his kit, he can just store like add Thor events in his deck. I mean, you can just store it naturally with Thor events and using his base Thor activation, and you don't really have to even worry about minions at all. So that's really cool to have a hero who's a minion slayer who really unlocks their full potential, when he's defeating minions. But he doesn't have to defeat minions to still be a competent hero, right? I still think that he's gonna be as best if you're slaying minions, but for him to still work outside that, I think is really, really cool. So he definitely has in-game versatility, and he can play a bunch of different ways. Next would be cancels. I think it's very important to be able to have encounter card cancels because if, for example, you know that you'll lose if the villain like schemes like it's in advance, right? If you have a card in your hand that can cancel a advance like a scheme activation, that's very valuable because then you don't have to remove that from the main scheme. You can just leave it there for one more turn because you know that you'll at least survive for one other turn because you can just cancel the activation. So I think that having cancels is important in Marvel Champions. And unfortunately, Winter Soldier has no type of cancel in his kit through like an event or like through like upgrades. So he just has no way to cancel anything, which is fine. I think most heroes in Marvel Champions don't have that cancel. And then last is going to be, does Winter Soldier have versatility across every single aspect? He definitely does. I think that he's going to be best, obviously in aggression because he's slaying minions, but he has aspect hooks, all around, right? Playing Justice, you don't even have to lean into, slaying minions because then you provide him with authority events that he would want to, just be a regular non-min slaying hero and just, authority normally. But you also have Infiltration, which can summon a minion, right? That's a really powerful new Thor event that just recently came out. Ensures Hero Pack, where you can summon out a minion and still remove tons of threats. In Protection, you have Come Get Me Bub, summoning a minion. You can heal Winter Soldier and you give him a tough stats card. In Leadership, it's really good with Winter Soldier because of Squared Off, right? Summoning a minion and playing an ally for a reduced cost. So Winter Soldier definitely has amazing hooks in every single aspect. I think he definitely has that aspect versatility. So overall, for his versatility, I give him a score of 2 out of 3. So yeah, usually whenever a hero is missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 check boxes here, I give them a evaluation of an A tier, right? I think Winter Soldier is a very, very solid A tier hero, and you can definitely make the case that he's on the upper echelon of A tier heroes because, like we said before, there's a bunch of asterisks that I gave him, all around there, and you could definitely make the case for him even being an S tier hero. Unfortunately, I think that for him to really be S tier, you need to have a constant flow of minions, right? So if you're facing a scenario that doesn't do that, or if you face a scenario and you get very unlucky where you're not getting out minions and you don't have a reliable way to flip down to trigger, the safe house that we talked about, right? His alter ego action card. If you can, flip down reliably and trigger the safe house here, then he's fine no matter what, because then you can just force your way to get minions out. But if you don't have that and you're so unlucky and you just don't get any minions, I think that his floor is still going to be at least an A tier. So I think he's a very solid hero. I definitely play very smooth games with him, right? Like especially against my expert Ronin game where it just like flowed and mins they weren't even coming out like a lot, but it just felt really easy. I don't think that that's gonna be your everyday Winter Soldier game, because if you get real unlucky and you just don't get those minions, he could feel like he's struggling a little bit. But overall, I think that it is pretty normal to get a normal amount of minions. Minions are a regular part of Marvel Champions, so I think that Winter Soldier really works well with that. And definitely in multiplayer, there's so many more chances to have minions come out, so Winter Soldier can really help control the board for other players and help them defeat minions that are engaged with the other players. And he can still proc all of his powerful abilities whenever he does that, which is really nice. So definitely, he even goes up in multiplayer, in my opinion. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about Winter Soldier. Is he an A tier hero for you guys as well? And in terms of how fun he is, I think Winter Soldier is super duper fun. He's like the epitome of what I think a minion slayer should be in Marvel Champions. Being able to effortlessly, remove threat, right, without even thwarting, right? There's games I play, I don't even have to use my basic Thor activation, don't have to play Thor events. He can just control all threat by summoning out minions and clearing them all off. And then, yeah, the main schemes I like Zero, which just feels really nice. It's tough for me because I really like Thor's kit as well. They're pretty neck and neck, right? I don't know if I like Thor more or Winter Soldier because Thor, you have to really work for it a little bit more, and it's like a little bit more difficult to do that. So it feels more satisfying. But Winter Soldier just feels so smooth, so fun right out the gate. I don't know. It's a tough one. Let me know down in the comments who you guys prefer, Winter Soldier or Thor, and let me know if you guys agree with the A tier evaluation for Winter Soldier. I think that if you always have, minions, especially weaker minions, he is easily an S tier plus 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 hero. But I think that overall, everything, taking everything into account, I think A tier is a fair evaluation for Winter Soldier. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.